She holds more Oscar nominations than any actor in history, an unmatched symbol of excellence. Yet, behind that shimmering reputation is a woman whose climb was anything but smooth. She endured profound personal loss, casual dismissals of her talent, and the persistent burden of living up to a nearly impossible standard. This is the story of Meryl Streep, a girl from suburban New Jersey who once thought she'd become an opera singer, a newly minted Yale graduate who faced rejection for looking too ugly, a grieving fiancée blindsided by heartbreak. And through each trial, she discovered new layers of herself, the same way she unearthed characters on screen. If you think her life was one seamless winning streak, get ready for a few surprises. Meryl was born Mary Louise Streep in 1949, the eldest of three children. Her father, Harry, was a pharmaceutical executive who exuded quiet confidence. Her mother, Mary, had been a talented artist and performer in her youth. At first glance, it seemed like the perfect nurturing environment for a budding actor. But Meryl wasn't immediately drawn to the spotlight. She was more of an overachieving student and a cheerleader, someone who liked excelling at whatever she tried, even if she wasn't yet sure where that excellence would lead. One day, she imagined herself on stage at the Metropolitan Opera. Another day, she dabbled in student government. Acting was on her radar, but it didn't dominate her universe. Still, she had a distinctive spark whenever she had to stand up and perform in any capacity. And her teachers noticed something alive in her voice and gestures. By the time she entered Vassar College, Meryl was flirting with the idea of a theatrical career. She took part in campus plays, impressing peers with her uncanny ability to shift accents or sink into a character as though she'd been living that person's life for years. She couldn't fully articulate why she found acting so thrilling. It just felt like an outlet for everything she'd absorbed from the world. People called her a chameleon, which delighted her, even if she wasn't sure how to make a living out of it. When she graduated and later enrolled at the Yale School of Drama, she encountered a much harsher environment. Professors picked apart each syllable she spoke, nitpicking everything from posture to pitch. She'd been a star on the college stage, but Yale was a different battlefield. Students scrambled for attention, and not everyone emerged unscathed. In a moment of exhaustion, she wondered if law school might have been more sensible. Yet, something about the craft still lit her up from within, so she persisted. One day, she auditioned for a part in the 1976 King Kong remake, only to overhear producer Dino De Laurentiis mutter in Italian, "Why did you bring me this ugly thing?" not realizing she understood every word. Legend has it that she shot back a response in fluent Italian, letting him know exactly how she felt. That moment could have crushed her confidence. Instead, it became a wake-up call. She began to realize that not everyone in Hollywood would be dazzled by her technique. Some would dismiss her outright. This didn't deter her. It fueled her. She had worked too hard at Yale, internalizing the idea that flawless technique could be the key to longevity. Now, she saw that resilience mattered just as much as talent. Soon after, she landed a small role in Julia, 1977, where she had only a few minutes of screen time. But it was enough. People in the industry took note of her presence, that subtle sense of depth she brought, even to fleeting scenes. Then came The Deer Hunter, 1978, a project that would change her life in more ways than one. The film, shot on a budget of around $15 million, ended up grossing more than $48 million in the US alone. Beyond the box office success, it introduced Meryl to actor John Cazale, who was quietly battling terminal cancer. Their off-screen relationship blossomed, even as they both knew time was dangerously short. When he passed away in 1978, Meryl was devastated. She moved out of the apartment they shared, haunted by the sense that her personal world was slipping through her fingers right as her career was taking flight. For a moment, she considered quitting acting altogether. The heartbreak felt too big, the city too cold. Yet she found solace in her work, as if immersing herself in other people's stories allowed her to survive her own. Soon after, she accepted a part in Kramer vs. Kramer, 1979. The role of Joanna, a mother wrestling with the guilt and confusion of leaving her child, offered her a place to pour her sorrow. During filming, Dustin Hoffman allegedly drew upon her real life grief in ways that bordered on cruel, hoping it would heighten her performance. Though the stories differ on how far he actually went, Meryl herself hinted later that she found some on-set tactics disrespectful. Still, the performance was luminous, capturing a nuanced portrait of a woman in turmoil, and it earned her first Oscar win for Best Supporting Actress. Critics marveled at how much honesty she projected in each scene, but what they didn't see was that honesty came from an open wound that hadn't begun to close. In the aftermath of that success, Meryl's name became synonymous with quality. She was no longer just the actress who'd done a couple of well-received roles. She was the woman who could convey heartbreak, passion, or steeliness with just a slight shift in expression. Sophie's Choice 1982 solidified that reputation even further. She disappeared into the role of a Polish immigrant with a haunting secret, mastering both a Polish accent and a German accent within the same performance. Film critics at the time called it a tour de force, and it garnered her another Oscar. Her ability to transform was both lauded and criticized. Some accused her of being too technical, lacking spontaneity. She brushed off these critiques, explaining in one interview, "My job is to understand people, why they do what they do, so the audience can understand too." It was less about showing off technique and more about empathy. As her star rose, so did questions about whether she'd step away to focus on family life. She married sculptor Don Gummer in 1978, forging a partnership anchored by mutual respect. Over the years, they had 4 children. Industry insiders whispered that motherhood might slow down her momentum. An unspoken assumption in Hollywood was that a woman with kids couldn't handle the hectic pace of back-to-back films. Yet, Meryl proved them wrong, juggling a large family and a relentless shooting schedule. She admitted it wasn't easy. Friends recalled nights when she'd return from a set at midnight, only to help with a science project or a feverish child. This balancing act became its own kind of conflict. She wanted to be present at home, but the roles kept coming, and each one felt like an unmissable opportunity to delve deeper into her craft. Across the 80s and 90s, she racked up role after role, each seemingly designed to test her range. Out of Africa, Ironweed, A Cry in the Dark, The Bridges of Madison County. But success can be its own weight. She accumulated more Oscar nominations than any actor in history, and that achievement cast an odd shadow. Some critics joked that her name on a cast list guaranteed an Academy nod. There was a subtle pressure to remain the greatest living actress. It was as if every new performance had to live up to an impossible bar set by her own track record. She felt it. In interviews, she sometimes downplayed her accolades, saying she just chose scripts that spoke to her. But you could see the tension. How do you keep surprising the audience and yourself when people assume you can do anything? She found a fresh route in the early 2000s by embracing lighter, more comedic work. The Devil Wears Prada, 2006, was a perfect example. She played Miranda Priestley, a formidable fashion editor with an icy stare, in a film that cost around $35 million to make and ended up grossing $326 million worldwide. Critics adored her witty, under-the-surface approach to comedy, a stark contrast to the wrenching dramas that had defined her earlier years. And it wasn't just critics. Entire new audiences discovered her, especially younger viewers who might not have sat through Sophie's Choice, but laughed and gasped at every sharp-tongued remark she delivered. A few years later, Mamma Mia, 2008, pushed her comedic range even further. And that summer sing-along blockbuster earned over $609 million on a $52 million budget. Suddenly, Meryl Streep became a pop cultural phenomenon beyond the art house crowd. She was a box office draw on par with action stars half her age. By then, she was well past 50, a stage where Hollywood traditionally cast women aside. Yet, her career only grew stronger. She took on the steely British Prime Minister in The Iron Lady, 2011, winning another Oscar. She played a witch in Into the Woods, 2014. She transformed into a rock and roll loving mother in Ricky and the Flash, 2015. Each role felt like another experiment, another chance to dive into a persona radically different from the last. Some said her appetite for transformation bordered on obsessive. She preferred to see it as curiosity. I'm interested in what it would be like to be you, she once explained, pointing to an empathetic core in all her performances. Even with this extraordinary longevity, she never forgot the heartbreaks and close calls from her early years. In rare, candid moments, she'd referenced John Cazale's memory or recall those humiliating auditions where she was labeled unfit for mainstream beauty standards. Instead of letting that bitterness consume her, she channeled it into her portrayals of complex women. Each character seemed to hold a trace of Meryl's own experiences, her empathy for human struggle, her resilience in the face of personal tragedy. So, why do people keep searching for Meryl Streep? Because she embodies an ideal, the performer who can do it all, yet remains deeply human. She has shown that technical mastery and raw emotion can coexist. That being a mother doesn't mean shelving your ambitions. And that heartbreak, while devastating, can sharpen your perspective rather than destroy it. Her trajectory wasn't a steady climb of triumphs. It was shaped by grief, setbacks, and the daunting weight of her own reputation. But each conflict became another layer of insight she used in her work. Today, even with a trophy shelf that defies belief, she doesn't seem to rest on past glory. She's talked about the thrill of reading a new script, wondering if this next part might unearth something in her she didn't know existed. It's that restlessness, that refusal to stop exploring that makes her story so compelling. She's been told, "You're the best," for decades, but she still approaches her craft with a sense of discovery, and perhaps that's the real key to her enduring legacy. When people say her name, they don't just see a record holding actress, they see a real person who dared to keep going when life was merciless, who refused to be pigeonholed by her age, who turned rejection into motivation, and who, in the end, became an icon without ever losing the curiosity of a student. That's the true essence of Meryl Streep. A life of transformation, powered by empathy, resilience, and a relentless desire to grow on screen and off. If this story resonated with you, feel free to check out the channel. There you'll find more stories where I talk about the challenging life journeys of celebrities.